Hello, I'm Frank Stanishi of Open Forum, candid, frank, and live, of course. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Open Forum, joining me is Ron James, entertainer, author, actor, series innovator, comedian, and socially conscientious human being. Self-professed Stephen Leacock on Benzedrine. Ron James, North American, even Edinburgh Chase has settled him here at home in Ontario, and he is going on a great tour. It's called the Back Where I Belong Tour in Ontario. Ron James, the author of All Over the Map, Rambles, and Ruminations from the Canadian Road, a book of his life, the life of others, and how they impacted. Ron, the book does not hide from the injustices of our Native and Aboriginal First Peoples, those that they have suffered, without shame or any real change. Ron James, thank you for joining me here today. And I guess my first question is, how important is it that your views as a witness to injustice be part of your platform? I think that's the most I think that's the greatest thing about what you're doing here.
Well, thank you, Frank. I mean, I think comedians by nature are iconoclasts, and I think it's imperative that we speak truth to power. Yet, we have a country that has a certain deference, or it did prior to the fractures that have occurred during COVID. Excuse me, a deference for authority, sometimes dysfunctional, as Farley Mowat said to me. He said to me once, he said, Canadians don't trust satire, Ronnie. You got to sneak in the back door and be sitting down at the table before the bastards even know you're in the house. And having started out my career in Second City, we always tried to adhere to that adage and play to the top of our intelligence, not the lowest common denominator. But we also peppered our 2 hour show with all kinds of different sketches. So they would appeal to everybody. You would have a political scene, and then you would have a relating scene, or you would have a cast scene. You might have a solo spot by somebody. And I carried that mandate into my stand-up. So for the 100 minutes to 2 hours, I'll be on stage without a break. I'll land on political issues. I'll land on social justice issues. I'll land on relationship issues, and changes in the zeitgeist, so to speak. And of course, now hitting the road with these tectonic and seismic changes afoot in the world, it's more imperative than ever that people try to make sense of the chaos we're all walking through in the language of laughs. But I don't think they need a sermon. I think they need an escape hatch, because I think everyone's so inundated with so much information. I mean, we've become gluttonous in terms of all the information we can and do consume. I was saying that I'm getting so much information, I don't know what's going on. So when someone went to the Oracle of Delphi to ask for advice, they said, who's the smartest man in Athens? And the Oracle of Delphi said, Socrates. I said, why? Because the first thing he said to me was, look, I don't know anything. And I think, and then someone sent a meme to me yesterday, which I laughed at. It said, I'm no longer an expert on epidemiology. I've transferred my skills to becoming an expert on no-fly zones. Looking forward to the new change of career.
Yeah. There's always a cultural shift. There's always something, it almost seems as though, uh, we can only look at one bobble at a time. Now, when you do your stand up and when you do your work and when you think about what you're doing, you have to be more broad minded, right? Because you
Absolutely.
can't spend an hour talking about no fly zone.
No, 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 you can't. Nor Putin, nor the convoy, nor Jeff Bezos and his spaceship. you land on all kinds of different bases, and that's imperative. I've always said that I like people to be laughing at different things in the same joke, because you have a wide swath of individuals who'll come to buy a ticket. And I also want to make sure that they feel a lot lighter leaving the theater than when they walked in, because it's really a comedian's job to not put another brick on their back, but to lighten that load.
Yeah.
And if they can process the last 2 years of trauma we've experienced in the language of laughs, all the better. I went on tour in the Maritimes with a dozen dates in the fall with people double vaxxed and masked and sitting shoulder to shoulder, laughing their worries away. And I thought, this is great. And now, lo and behold, the same thing. 3 months later, I'm going on tour, and this major seismic shift in the psychic paradigm. I mean, there's phrases thermonuclear war being stated in the news every single day. And I said, you might as well laugh, because come Easter, we could all be space dust flying around a ring of Saturn anyway. Then all those fundamental Christians who wanted to go to heaven for the end times will get their wish, so they'll be happy. But I'm in no rush to hang around heaven listening to Johnny Cash and June Carter harmonize.
Well, it's funny how much things change and then they remain the same. And as a comedian, a lot of your material, like when I was listening to your book, you talked about a time when oil was $140 a barrel.
Yeah.
Everything, and no matter how much things change, they remain the same.
Here it
And
is.
the issues then that you talked about are relevant today.
It's interesting how cyclical it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oil was at $140 a barrel. Every time a car blew up in Baghdad, there were 2 new trucks in every Albertan's driveway. And I was living large. I mean, I was putting 2 sold-out shows in the Winspear Center. And that's 2,000 people. I mean, we were going out for encore dates in 2007. Time after, it was the land of the second chance for people from Atlantic Canada. And I loved it. And a lot of Easterners don't get to see Alberta, and a lot of Albertans don't get to see the East. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of with the book, is that if there's any theme, it's a celebration of people and place, and that everybody is just trying to make tomorrow better than today and get through this world in one piece.
I think within Canada, we talk about, diversity, right? And one of the things that the Maritimes have taught us is that they'll go where work is. And we just talked about oil, and back then, and a lot of the folks in the Maritimes were leaving the province for work to go to Alberta. So we do have that. It's not a paradigm shift, I guess, but it is a shift nonetheless, where we're getting at least some people interacting within Canada. We're not delineated by what province we're in. We do have a few people that understand what's going on everywhere. So how does that affect your tour? And when you tell your jokes, does it allow you to at least maintain a kind of consistency across the country?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, I customize for each place. I always have. That was the genesis of me writing my 9 one-hour specials. And I would hone a third of the act on the I would hone a third of the customized material when I was on the road, and then I'd come back and research and write the other 2/3, and then it would go from the page to the stage. Because if I'm doing a show about British Columbia, I can't exactly work the material out at a club in Toronto. So I addressed the CBC's mandate at the time. I'm proud to say the last 4 specials did 1.4 million viewers, 3 out of the 4. But, my hair turned white, I turned 60, and I was shown the door. So there you go. But I just wish they had given my 1-hour spot to another young comedian, or a younger comedian rather, who could have encapsulated the events of the year. I think the country deserves it, rather than what passed off as stand-up.
And there's talent out there that they could
tons of talent. It's
Right?
unbelievable. Toronto is rich with talent, just rich with it.
That's the tough part, business, politics.
None of these people go out to the clubs. They don't sit in the clubs. I mean, everything's changed so much since I started. Someone told me that my buddy's a director. He said, nobody wants to look at you unless you got 10,000 Instagram fans. So there's that too, right?
Yeah, I know. Influencers.
whatever they are.
That's what they call them. I don't
Well,
know
you
what
still
the
have to be
instance is.
competent at your craft, and
Absolutely.
that's always going to be a mandate. It's you can, people think they can catch lightning in a bottle and become an online sensation, and I suppose maybe you could, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to deliver in front of a live house. I don't think that's ever going to change with comedy.
Well,
It hasn't
there's
changed
always
since the fool put a bowl in front of himself during market day and did 10 minutes on the price of turnips.
Well, we live in a world today where people are looking for instant gratification, and I guess
Absolutely.
it's easier to be connected to somebody who basically really doesn't say much other than what they're having for breakfast today. So that's the issue that you have to contend with. But I'd like to dive in more into what it takes to be relevant. Like, to me, that isn't relevant because in a month, what they did is going to be the same thing they do this month. The relevance to me is a young man like you growing up in the Maritimes. What brought you to comedy, and what inspired you to make and gave you the belief that you could do something like what you've done?
That's a great question. I would have to say, I mean, I was always funny. My father was a great joke teller, really good joke teller, great sense of natural timing. He was the Newfoundlander. My mother was funny, and uh, you know, we weren't the kind of kids who were told to, uh, was it sit down and shut up kind of kids. I talked a lot, had the ADHD, but I was always a class clown, and talked too much. That came in the report card. So there was already a natural aptitude for getting laughs. I can never remember a time when I didn't. That being said, it's an absolutely exponential leap, as I've said in my book, to go from being funny in the classroom or kitchen to stepping out from behind that curtain in front of the glaring solo spot that's staring at you like the judgmental eye of God. And the audience isn't saying a thing. All you can hear is the rapid beating of your heart and their contemptible silence that's screaming, "Get off." And so that is um, a huge leap of faith. And telling you this story now, I still remember the first time I stepped on stage at Yuck Yucks on Bay Street in 1980. I still remember the fear. I still remember uh, oh boy. And I tried it for about, 3 or 4 months, and I didn't have the courage to bomb all that time. So I ended up in an improv company in Second City, which was a great choice at that time. And it was appropriate for me. So what had influenced me was the incredible birth of great comedians in the 70s. Robin Williams, Steve Martin, George Carlin, Robert Klein,
Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly. I didn't discover Billy Connolly till later in life,
Ah,
and then it was Saturday Night Live, and so I began to find out that the Saturday Night Live guys had come from Second City. But I did some plays in university, but mostly I was really funny just riffing with my pals, and or I was riffing and they were laughing. And so I came to Toronto, and after I graduated with a degree in history, I had no plans to do anything. The only thing that was open to me was a job at the phone company if I wanted it, because I'd worked there for 5 years in the summertime taking out telephones. I didn't want to do that. I had a feeling in my heart after doing a couple of plays and getting the response I did and showing up in the variety show, but it was an addiction then. Laughter was an addiction. I needed that. I needed it to feel whole. And what's nice that as you grow older and become more professional, or become a professional in this calling, uh, there's not a desire to be on, quote unquote, all the time.
yeah, but you still what your background tells me is that you were given an opportunity to believe that you could say something, and then having said stuff, you were able to learn about the reaction of people and use that as a foundation, I guess, moving forward in your comedy act, because you need to talk and you need to react to what people say. So how does that affect you moving along over the years, where listening to the audience, how has that affected you?
You mean listening to what an
The
audience wants to
reaction, yeah,
hear?
their reaction. How important is it moving forward? From year to year, the audience shifts. We talked about, certain paradigm shifts in life.
Yeah.
So how do you keep up? Is it any kind of challenge to modify what you're doing based on reactions of the audience, or you feel you're leading the audience along?
Well, it's this metaphysical tennis match you have with the audience, right? So that's one thing. There's instinct as well. Your instinct tells you when you should and shouldn't. I mean, it's remarkable the way the brain works when you're on that stage. It's cutting and pasting at the speed of light. And you might have look, I've got 9 1-hour specials worth stuck in my head. And then at the beginning of each tour, I write new stuff in order to address the issues of the time. So when you feel an audience pulling out on something, you need a good place to land, which is usually a strong joke and a universally relatable subject after something that's controversial. That being said, you have to strike a balance between artistic needs and audience expectation. You can't pander to an audience. They'll smell that too. But this polarization and fracturing of the electorate that's occurred, I think that my demographic is more or less boomers and younger people too, but I think I draw the enlightened and people who want to be moving the world to the right side of history. If there's a small percentage of my audience that feels disappointed, I tip the wrong apple cart at times. That's the chance you have to take as a social satirist. I don't think I'm going to be getting a lot of trucks parked at my theater with upside down Canadian flags flying on hockey sticks.
Well, that's something that I'm not sure that's an aim anybody wants to have, that kind of negativity. But let's talk about fun negativity. You've had hecklers. How do you deal with hecklers?
I'll
When
tell
they
you, that is the crucible of the club years, dealing with drunks and hecklers. And I've been asked this question several times, and I never did have a comeback with them. But it's usually 1, 2, 3, and then you got to shut them down. You let them be part of it for a bit. And I never built my act around riffing with the front audience, which boded me very well when I moved into soft seat theaters. I mean, I don't think we've clarified to your listeners that, I moved out of the clubs 25 years ago, and I was the first Canadian comedian to do so who wasn't sponsored by the CBC at the time. Lorne Elliott did it with Madly Off in All Directions, which gave us great opportunities to be heard nationally, much as the Debaters does today. But I started playing soft seaters a long time ago, booking myself when nobody was doing it, and there was a civility about the soft seaters that didn't exist in the clubs. Namely, you're not dealing with the drunks, but
Yeah.
you can't let those kinds of people take over your set. It's a knife fight in a phone booth. But those times that I had to deal with them, second show Saturday night in Sudbury at Yuck Yucks, it made me stronger. And if you can do your 45-minute set and not know what you've said, but know that you've survived and you're getting a big round of applause, you're a survivor. And I miss aspects of the club scene. I miss that scrum. I miss that I miss that street fighting aspect of the work. And there's some comedians in the country who are great at that. But Canada doesn't have as healthy a club circuit as America does, and it boils down to numbers. 375 million people in America, 37 million here. I mean, Bill Maher can say what he wants and have half the country of America hating him, and still have 7 times the population of Canada thinking he's a genius.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I was mentioning that, it wasn't just so much, not directly that, is sometimes heckling is a compliment. Sometimes you think it's a heckle when it is a compliment. One of the nicest stories that I like, one of the nicest stories I liked though that you told was the Don Rickles one, where
Rickles, yeah.
where you asked him. That's the point I was trying to make. Is that from heckling does come compliment as well. It's not always as cut and dried as a love-hate relationship. Or
the Rickles story was great. When I came off stage, I'd been doing this old bit about camping's fun in the daytime. As soon as the sun goes down, everything that eats meat wakes up. I was pretty safe, though. We camped beside some Germans. God bless them with their accent, will scare anything. Ich won't leave in the house, the uns, leave in the schnell, Achtung, der raus in the house, this leaving it. And they were only trying to get the tent up. Anyway, Rickles was watching backstage at Just for Laughs. He hosted our gala event, and he came up to me, grabbed me by the face. He said, "That was a great set, kid." I said, "Thanks very much, Mr. Rickles." He said, "I never got my first break until I was 40 years old. How are you? How old are you?" I said, 42. His face goes like this. Slaps me on the side of my cheek. "You're finished." Anyway, I went down to his dressing room, and he was in there with his buddies. He was just sitting there in the corner with 2 high balls of ice water and his tuxedo open, not saying a thing. And he wrote on my poster, "Funny is as funny does, and you are." And 6 months later, I was stuck in a blizzard trying to get to Prince George, BC, a primal blizzard that a Yeti wouldn't wander. And that stayed in my head. Funny is as funny does, and you are. So there you go.
Yeah, that's the kind of point I was trying to lead into that. Sorry, I was trying to drag you down that road for a reason. When we talk about comedy, and we talked a little bit about seriousness. When it comes to seriousness in comedy, it's a real good dance when it works. When people go, ah. What are some of the ah moments that you're most proud of that your work has highlighted?
Oh my gosh.
I know there's lots of them. I could tell you if you want.
Yeah, bring them up if you want.
Yeah. Well, when you talk, well, just even the thing about you brought up just now about Germans using it, as a moment when people say, we don't move on. It's important that people move on. Not that what Germany did has to be forgotten. That's not my point. My point is that
they're the super good guys now, and justifiably so. I mean, the way they've opened their arms and houses and hearts to fleeing Ukrainians.
Right. And that was the other thing that caught me in your book. When you were talking about immigration, the first group that you mentioned was Ukrainians. Again, and this is something that you wrote when you were talking about going out west.
Yeah.
And how that comes to the fore now.
There it is, full circle. The 1880s and the government promising people from European backwaters where bad guys with big mustaches kicked you comatose for just looking happy. And suddenly they show up at Pier 21 in Halifax, walking right out of the Middle Ages, really, headed for 160 acres of gristle-hard prairie in a land so mean it could eat you. But the posters that Canadian government put up across Poland and Silesia and Russia and the Ukraine were waving fields of wheat. These people worked very hard and they dropped dead behind the plow at the age of 55. And yet the people who got their walking papers at that 160 acres of free land were the Cree and the Assiniboine and the Blackfoot. This is the pain and the contradiction of empire.
Yeah, this is one of the things you see. That's what makes you go, when you realize, like, you talk a lot about having Native friends and how
the Indigenous people I met on the road really opened my eyes to a wider world in Canada,
and how forgiving they are, and When I read that part, heard that part, it amazed me that their forgiveness was so willing to be shared with you. You talked about an elderly Native woman who you met personally and had a great conversation with, and how she shared her thoughts with you, which obviously impacted on you because you related them in your book.
She did. The indigenous chap in Prince Albert, he did. At a Safeway, we shared a coffee together, and these people just started talking to me. My favorite story in the book is Vern, about this stranded indigenous chap who the bus dropped him off at the Petro Canada station, and he knew my name, which is remarkable. Because, as I said in the book, nobody knows Canadian performers' names. You might, NDP backbenchers get more name recognition than Canadian performers do. And so I ended up giving him a lift from the Airdrie gas pumps to Leduc. And it was a frightening ride, because he was angry and he had a couple of pops. But he just kept saying, "Hey, you're that rock and roll star from the radio." I said, "I wasn't a rock and roll star and I wasn't on the radio. I'm a comedian and I'm on TV." And he went, "Yeah, whatever." But there was a sweetness to his soul, And so I gave him that lift, and I don't make a habit of that, and I haven't in the 25 years I've been on the road. And the elderly indigenous woman had been hitchhiking on a road in the Yukon at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning when it was minus 35 degrees. And I was driving back to Whitehorse from Tagish Lake. And I remember walking past the person, seeing a thumb out and thinking, boy, it's a serial killer. It's going to take him an hour and a half to get the butcher knife out from beneath the layers of Gore-Tex. So I gave her a lift, and she said, "What are you doing up here?" I said, "Well, I had a couple of days off, so I rented a cabin and I went for a hike in the woods." And she said, "By yourself?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Whoa, God was watching out for you." I said, "Why is that?" She goes, "The bears are waking up early because it was so mild. One of them's eating the dogs down by the lake and taking everything but the head." And I'm thinking, I remember Kwakiutl folklore where a shape-shifting she-bear eats her suitor. And I'm hoping, gee whiz, if she turns on me, she's going to make an awful mess of this rental car. I looked at her and I said, no. I was singing Battle Hymn of the Republic at the top of my lungs, and every moose or bear in 127 kilometers would have had their paws over their ears. I'm such a bad singer. And she went, "Oh, you should be a comedian." Now, that was 20 years ago when I first started doing stand-up. And yeah, so, and then, of course, on the caribou hunt with Charlie, who was a native cinematographer 30 years ago now in Vancouver, but fell to addiction and then pulled himself out of it. And now he was up in a res 3 hours north of Suluka. So the average white dude from Toronto doesn't have those epiphanies. I had a waitress tell me her life story years ago at the Delta Hotel in Calgary. Happened to be from Cape Breton. Elderly grandmother flying to Deer Lake, Newfoundland, told me of her story. And there was a sweetness and an honor to it all. Crusty old hockey player who played in the Woodchoppers League in Lake Huron in 1947. And some of them would end this with, "If you ever write a book, put it in it." So I think they wanted their stories heard. So I felt like I was a chronicler. I felt like I was chronicling something important and celebrating. And it was the hidden boon of me following my bliss. It was the hidden gift, and far greater than a payday's treasure.
I totally understand the road that you found yourself on here. We do a lot of sports programming here, and lacrosse is one of my favorite things that I do. And I've had the good fortune to, the people of the Creator have affected my life, and I've had the good fortune to get to know them a little bit.
Changes you, man.
It's it doesn't have to be angry. It can be understanding and be compassionate and not look for a war, but look for peace. It is so hard to carry, anger. I was going to end with it, but I'll say it here. Letting go is really important. And, that's an important thing.
That's why I put that story in about Joe Kapp and Angelo Mosca.
That was my lead in grizzly bear.
Thanks,
A good
bro.
segue from the grizzly bear to
Let
that
it go, bro.
situation.
Let it go. This fight was something else. Boy, having to, and I was supposed to interview those Titans. My chair was right in the middle. You imagine? Oh
I
boy,
saw it. I
Joe
couldn't
was like
believe it.
Joe Cap was just a spring-loaded puma, not an ounce of fat on him, lean and mean. But his eyes looked lost, and I read later that 3 years later he died of Alzheimer's,
Oh,
as
gee.
did Angie, I believe. And but Angie's hand was the largest human being's hand I'd ever shaken in my life. My hand was swallowed by it. It was a tennis racket of muscle, bone, and gristle that I said in the book had spent a lifetime turning grown men into pools of cartilage.
And it appeared you were. It felt a little bit like you were at a rodeo and you were looking for the barrel to hide in.
Oh man, I tell you, the only way to have survived that would have had rodeo clown training, but there was no fence to jump over. It was a remarkable day, and it's available. I mean, you can still see it on YouTube. And when you look on YouTube, there's a little guy in a black suit running really fast to the left, stage left. That's me.
I have to say, just this one story again. I mentioned all my programs. I'm plugging my own shows, and that we do CFL show. I've been doing it for years, and it's amazing. That is one of the greatest stories in CFL history that isn't told enough, in my opinion. And the book is worth purchasing or buying. As you know, an emergency basis, I had to listen to your book because I needed to get it in a hurry, and hearing your voice describe that day, it's worth getting the book, even the verbal
Thanks, Frank.
version. Oh, you're welcome. I truly mean it. It comes from the heart. I was laughing out loud, LOL, as they say nowadays.
Yeah, as
And
they say.
I was impressed with your delivery, and I've always been impressed with your delivery. And one of the things that I find very interesting is that you have never been, you've never been a static person. You've always gone horizontal and spread yourself out, and not let small failures stop you. Black Fly was an experience that could have been a lot better.
Absolutely.
The experience was something that you did for 2 years, and what
A
I really,
validation of the imagination.
yeah, and what I enjoyed about it most, and please talk about it, but what I want people to know is, while it was 2 years and it was a frustration for you, all you talk about is the good it did in that community for 2 years.
Well, you have to see the silver lining in it, right? I mean, I was wounded, and it took a long time to process, and that's where the live work and my road came in. So for 7 years, I hit the road really hard after that, and because there was no excuse for the production company Salter Street to throw us under the bus the way they did. But they were working with Michael Moore, and Made in Canada was their flagship show. This hour is 22 minutes, and we were just some kind of rural cousin down the road, some strange period piece. But I loved working with those actors. Colin Mockery co-starred with me, Shauna Black, Sherry Miracle, and Lorne Cardinal, and Richard Donnet, and James Key. Oh my gosh, it was just wonderful. And I got to shoot in Nova Scotia in the summertime. I got to write and star in my own show. And Global were contemptible. They didn't give a shit. They just put us on at all sorts of different times. But you have to learn to see the hidden boons in things, especially in Canadian show business, because not many people grab the grail. And all you can hope is for longevity in a show, really. But it was a great idea, satirizing current social and political trends in the context of the 18th century Canadian fur trade. I don't know how I sold it to Global at the time, but I did. And it was cool. I walked into the fort one day, and there it was. But I had no editorial say, and that's imperative with your own vision. And I had people at the helm who didn't trust funny. And you have to trust comedy's subversive nature. It's just not storytelling. It's storytelling layered with affable subversion.
That's what we
Yeah.
talked about. That's what we talked about at the beginning, is that
Yeah.
there's always a message in comedy, because if there is no message, there's no relatability by people, right? Because
Correct.
I have to relate to what you're saying. If I can't relate to it, how do I laugh about it?
I hear you. And trying to relate to a show set in the 1783 is a challenge for any contemporary Canadian. But
It's a system that's been tried, Ron. You weren't that far wrong.
I wasn't. I was inspired.
There
by
are tons of
Blackadder.
shows
Yeah.
that speak to today using yesterday.
The past. I was so
Tons of
inspired by Monty Python and Blackadder, and any contemporary drama that's set in the past speaks to us today. But lesson learned. And so when I came to my own writing room here in these offices for the Ron James Show, we were able to build a team, and I approached it differently. And I had a producer who was taking my ship in the same direction. And you're still going to have network fights. I mean, they bounced us around the dial 7 times, but that just comes with the territory, as I said in the book. But what you have to take from it is the experience of growing. And I made a good living, and I put my kids through university, and built a house and things. So these Canadian dreams were actualized. And I'm a working class guy. Dad worked for the phone company. Mom was a homemaker. And I've always had a job since I was 13 years old, whether selling papers, working at the grocery store, or working at the hospital, or delivering papers, or driving my truck. And it was imperative for me to make a living at this chosen craft. And
the Ron James Show was an example of that, and a good segue for me would be not the euphemistic little guy Ron James, but the actual little guy.
Thank you.
That guy in the show used to have me in hysterics. His attitude.
Oh, little Ron.
Was a young, I said, I wasn't talking about the little Ronnie euphemistic one.
Yeah,
I was talking about the actual little Ronnie.
Yeah, it was a cool little cartoon. It was a cool little cartoon.
Absolutely.
It was an homage to the Coal Town Road, of course, to a day that is no more, and to my relatives and things like that. And so you pull from so many different. Johnny Carson said this to Steve Martin on Steve Martin's 11th time on The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson leans into him and says, "You'll use everything you ever knew." The best biography, period, on comedy is Born Standing Up, Steve Martin's. And I listened to it in the car, just like I listen to a lot of stuff in my travels. And it really stayed with me because it's true. You just plumb every corner of your head for an idea. Yeah.
And I think also the other thing that was very touching for me is comedians are a very tight group of people. They support each other. They're, we talked about Yuck Yucks, where it's a competitive situation, but that competition still has a very deep-rooted supportiveness in it.
Yeah, there's guys there that were friends forever. I mean, I only did Yucks for 6 months. I went to the Laugh Resort, and I was there for 5 years. That was an independent club. But there was a great spirit everybody was trying to get somewhere. There's no doubt about that. But it was very supportive. I enjoyed that place. I didn't find it nearly as political as Second City was.
I had also enjoyed your discussions about the late Mike.
Oh my gosh,
just died recently.
He was kind to me, and he was supportive. And in his later years, when he got sick and had the liver transplant, and then came out the other side. I mean, no one lives after a liver transplant, and he's incredible. Yeah, he was good to me.
And as far as your life is concerned, we all in life have challenges and stuff, right?
Yeah.
like you, I didn't. My marriage didn't survive.
Yeah.
Kind of like you, I took business far too seriously. I was into construction, and I would work 7 days a week. I'd work Christmas Day, New Year's Day, so I can relate a little bit about some of the pratfalls and troubles that a person like yourself, who's traveling on the road, how difficult it is to maintain a relationship. What have you learned looking back at that? Because I know your relationship with your children's great now. What
Yeah.
did you learn from that experience that you could share with our viewers?
Find balance. Find balance. Don't let ambition scuttle your dream of ambition. Don't let ambition scuttle your dream, which sounds like a contradiction. But I loved many family moments. Right?
Because you
And
talk about it a lot in the book. It's interwoven among the in the whole book. How you kind of almost knock yourself a little bit. I was feeling sympathetic for you because
well, I
to
wanted
admit
to
the
be
kind
fair
of
to
stuff.
her too, because I mean, I wasn't easy to live with. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but
like I
knowing
say,
that is it makes you strong. And if we like, that's what I needed to do. It just took me too long. It's hard to admit your failings, right? But once you get to the other side, you feel better about it.
you do, you do. You feel. I know I'm a hell of a lot stronger, and I know I'm. When your daughters say, "Oh, Dad, you've changed so much," and I mean, we'd grown apart too, without getting into any details about everything. We were just going our separate ways, and she didn't have a job, and she wanted me home, and I said, "Honey, I'm actualizing my dream." And she said, "Well, I didn't want to be married to a comedian." She said, "Take a dip in the backyard pool and forget about it."
Yeah.
I don't know. Find something, go back to school, do things like that. Volunteer, engage with the world. And it just didn't happen. And so, and I was, I would come back from the road and have all these great stories I wanted to share, but I didn't want to with her because I did them myself, and it would make her feel bad that she wasn't having the same epiphanies and eyes on this wider world that I was. And that's the price you pay. I'm sure others have paid it in the past. Many have paid it.
You're
But I'm
not
in a
alone.
happy place now. I like where I am. I got a good gal, and my daughters and I hang out, and I managed to get a little place down in Nova Scotia that I can go to in the summertime. I can rent when I'm not there. I lost my dad, who I speak of highly in the book, 5 years ago this August. And so there was a bittersweet aspect to that purchase of the place because he never did get down. But, my mom is 90 in July. I have good friends there. I'm really proud of my book. And I'm so jazzed to be back on the road again, despite these polarities that exist and the angst that exists in the world. I consider it a great honor to be able to step on stage and make people forget their troubles for 2 hours.
Absolutely, and help us understand and relate with our own parents. For example, don't touch the tent when it's raining.
Exactly.
Right? There's
Exactly.
advice that parents have that you should listen to, but unfortunately, sometimes we don't listen, and then we learn why it wasn't a good idea.
You got it.
Yeah. So, I have to tell you, the other thing that I wanted to talk to as well is that you're having a contest. You're still having that contest, right?
No, I didn't have that contest.
Oh, was it somebody else doing it on your behalf?
Was that just yesterday?
No, there's one. I've never won a contest in my life, so I figured the next best thing was giving you a chance to win a few DVDs and an autographed copy of my new book, All Over the Map, Rambles, Ruminations from the Canadian Road. This might be one of your promoters doing it on your
No,
behalf.
I just have an IT guy that I work with,
Oh,
and
okay.
we did that, and we did have the winners
Oh, okay.
because that was an interview that I did online.
Uh-huh.
That's an advertisement for an online interview I did.
Well, that was nice of you to do that, is all
Oh
I was
yeah,
trying
I love.
to.
Oh my gosh, during COVID, I did 3 live shows from my living room, live from my living room. I did. I mean, we got 3,700 people one New Year's Eve. My first special, Hindsight is
That's
2020.
right.
And then the next in March, a year ago now, we did Spring Loaded. I did several corporate gigs. But doing those shows from my living room was a riot. That was fun. Nice challenge, but it was cool. Felt great.
We know that you've got the book out
Yes.
all over the map. We know that you're going on tour. We have it up there, Ontario 2022.
Yeah.
And I guess in closing, what I'd like to ask you about is some of the venues that you've been at. You talked about soft seat, and for the people who didn't understand that statement, it basically speaks to being in Massey Hall as opposed to the old, in a bar, where you
Exactly
have hard seats, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the venues that you've had, you speak about them highly. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to, which towns. Give yourself a little plug here on where you're going.
Oh boy, you mean in Ontario?
Yeah, in Ontario.
Oh boy, Kingston's always a hot room. Love Kingston. The Aurelia Opera House, nice pocket opera house, 700 people in it. It's wonderful. The brand new theater, the Heaven St. Catherine's, really nice. The Roxy, have a soft spot for the Roxy up in Owen Sound. And that's one of the first theaters that I ever put a show in. Burlington has an amazing theater. It seats about 1,000. And of course, the Grand in London. That's an old vaudeville house. They have ghosts there and everything. Shot one of my specials at the River Run in Guelph. They always come out large for that. And of course, there's the Showcase in Peterborough, a perfect demographic for a town. In fact, I think that's where Procter & Gamble will test all their products because they have one of those perfect demographics, right? And, there's university, working class, rural, back to the earth granolas and professional. It's wonderful. It's a really great room to play. It's one of 3 rooms in the country. I've gotten 3 sold out shows at it on one tour. Those days are done though, I think.
I'll tell you though, it should be fun. I'll be looking. I think you go to Barrie too, right?
I'm not in Barrie this time.
Oh, you're not in Barrie this time?
No, I'll be in Barrie next year.
Okay. Well, I'm up that way. I'm up by Simcoe, so you're going to make me drive, aren't you?
Well, you must be close to. Well, if you're in Simcoe, you'd be close to Aurelia, wouldn't you?
Yeah. You could call it close.
And what about Newmarket?
I'm in between. I'm in Wasaga, to be clear.
Well, Newmarket's kind of close to there. No, I guess.
Oh, don't worry. I'll hunt you down.
There you go, Frank.
Oh, it really, Ron, it's always been a pleasure for me to be a fan and now have an opportunity to get to talk to you. I have to tell you, your sensitivity and your quick wit and your rolling, I'll tell you, I got to have a dictionary beside me, but I can never look up any words fast enough because of how quickly you speak. I got to tell you, if somebody wants to go to your concert, if they paid by the word, a real great value. I got to tell you.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, you're
I like
welcome.
the way language trips off the tongue and tickles the ear as well as the funny bone,
Well, and, you have a rapper kind of feel to what you do.
Rappers have told me that. My buddy's son's a rapper, and he said that to me once. So I guess so. But I slowed it down in the audio recording, and I'm not nearly as frenetic physically on stage as I used to be when I started. But I do enjoy the spoken word, and I think that's why I stayed in Canada, because there's a better public school system here. And that's what Lorne Michaels said to me years ago. I gave Mike Myers a star on the Walk of Fame in 2003, and I had a really good speech. And I went down to see Lorne Michaels about Saturday Night Live. And he saw my first special, and he said, well, he was wrong about some things. He said, you belong on the radio. And, well, a television series and 9 one-hour specials later, you're wrong, Lorne.
Yeah.
But he did say my deference for the spoken word won't work in America because America is a visual culture.
They're not very
a literary culture, and that Canadians who come to America make the mistake assuming that America's public school system is as good as ours, and it's not.
I just think it doesn't stick either. I think their system's okay. I just don't think it sticks. They're very myopic. When I've traveled to Europe a few times, and I can remember more than once standing in front of a fountain and listening to two Americans, and the phrase I always heard was, "Wow, there's a lot of foreigners here."
Shut up. Shut up. Wow, there's a lot of foreigners here. Isn't that perfect? Isn't that perfect?
Ron, it was a
Okay, brother.
pleasure. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure talking to you.
Right
Thank
on,
you so
Frank.
much for making time for us.
Hope your fans and your audience enjoyed it, buddy, as much as I did. Thank
I
you.
know they will. I know I did, and I know I'll be watching it again to see how many mistakes I made. Not
Oh, I
just
don't think
kidding.
you made any.
I don't watch again. It's,
Thanks,
thank
buddy.
you, Ron.
Thanks for the plugs on the book and the tour too, mate.
You're welcome anytime, my friend.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know how to get out of here now.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Ron Jones. I'm Ron James. Sorry. I'm Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for Open Forum, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it. Thanks for watching, everybody.